Rugby Championship game number 2, folks. The All Blacks and the Pumas, and the All Blacks get it done pretty comfortably in the end. 41 points to 12. We'll go over some key events and stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how the game went. But yeah, like between the Pumas and the All Blacks, occasionally they're close and occasionally they're hidings. This was a hiding, especially in the first half. The first half, the Pumas certainly looked very rattled, and the All Blacks basically put them to the sword. The second half was certainly a lot more competitive. It was a great atmosphere at the ground, which was cracking to see, but boy, were they quietened down early, which is not what you want when you're at home. You want the crowd to be that kind of extra player on the field, you know, getting you guys up off the deck and making some tackles, that inspiration, but they didn't really get a chance to because the Pumas went down pretty early. I mean, it was the All Blacks very initially who looked rattled when, D-Mac's clearing kick as they were trying to scramble it out their own goal line. The All Blacks ended up whacking Matera in the head, and then D-Mac had to kind of scramble to dot it down in his own goal area. But yeah, just the All Blacks exit play initially looked pretty hectic, but yeah, that was the only time really the All Blacks looked too rattled. I mean, the All Blacks were making a lot of carries, the Argentinian guys were making a lot of tackles, and the crowd was loving the big hits from the Argentinian tacklers early especially. But, I mean, on like 4 minutes, Scotty Barrett gets a line-out steal. Rico Juan there shows his gas with a wee dummy to get a nice line break. They go through some phases. Scotty Barrett has a half break and offloads it to Dan Coles, the guy who plays for England, Mark. 5 points to nil. 5 points to nil for the All Blacks. Starts to quiet things down a little bit. Narawa has a few good carries. It's good to see him getting his hand on the ball early to kind of settle any potential nerves that he had. And then, like 7 minutes, the All Blacks have got a 5-meter line out. Basically, they maul it, they go for advantage, they get advantage, and eventually Save is able to dot it down. Scotty Barrett had gone close in the build-up as well. So it's another missed conversion. So the goal kicking is not really there. They reckon it was kind of windy, so difficult conditions, but yeah, quiet by that point. 2 tries in the first 10 minutes. Quiet, and it gets quieter. 12 minutes. Geordie Barrett gets a try. And that one is a proper wow try. I mean, the All Blacks go blindside from their own 22, which shows some confidence, man. They're playing like a team which is not playing their first match of the year. And Bodie beats, I think, Cancelliere, who's going for the intercept, and then Cinti can't make a tackle. Passes to Geordie, and Geordie's able to kind of canter over for a try. So 17-0. We're not even at 15 minutes yet. It's really not what the Argentinian guys needed. They needed a kind of settler. They had a chance for it on 19 minutes. They had a maul about 10 metres out. They got advantage. They tried to go again. Not the maul this time. They had a bit of variation. They got it out, went through some phases, but then knocked it on over the line. That's a key moment where they really need to score. Like, you need to get back into the game, and then it gets worse for the Pumas guys because the New Zealanders win a scrum penalty, which gives them a kind of easy exit, and the New Zealand scrum was certainly getting on top. Like I mentioned in the preview, that the New Zealand scrummages are kind of, solid without being spectacular, basically. Well, in this game, they stepped it up a notch, and I mentioned that the Pumas scrum has been, not exactly a weapon of theirs for recent years, but it had been getting, improving. Well, it was kind of, sadly, I mean, a couple of young props, admittedly, 24-year-old and Sordoni and Gallo, but it was kind of back to the Pumas of a few years ago. They were getting bossed at scrum time. I mean, it didn't matter too much because New Zealand lost their own line-out throw, so it was still kind of a chance for Argentina to keep the pressure on, having missed that try over the line one earlier, but I feel like they rushed it. They did have New Zealand having to kind of scramble to make some defensive plays. And eventually, like Matera, I think it is, just throws this huge wide pass to Moroni, who gets smashed by 2 of the All Blacks. I think Narawa and Geordie Barrett. I feel like that was another moment. Like that plus the knock-on over the line in the first half are moments that we just needed that bit of patience. Maybe that's first game of the year. Nerves, or maybe that's just, we're 17-0 down at home, trying to force things, nerves. But either way, that's one where you needed a slightly cooler head from the Pumas guys. So they're still nil on the board at that time. 28 minutes more New Zealand pressure. A cross kick to Geordie Barrett. They have to double check if Bruni knocks on deliberately a Caleb Clark offload, but they reckon he's just going for the tackle, which I think was fair. But it doesn't make a difference in terms of stopping the All Blacks anyway, because the resulting stoppage in play results in a scrum. And eventually D-Mac just runs, draws, and passes to Rico, makes it look really silky smooth, and 24-0. Initially, it looked like the Pumas guys had held up Geordie Barrett in a tackle. That's what they were going for a turnover for, but Gardner ruled that it was a tackle they had to release, and I think that was essentially what gave the All Blacks guys the space to open them up. But yeah, 24-0 down, man. I mean, Sam Cane was doing the grunt work as well. It wasn't just all about the flashy stuff. Like, he was putting in some big hits as well. If he'd been an Argentinian player, he would have been getting the crowd into the game, because they love some big hits, and Sam Cane was making them. He smashed Cancelliere at one point. He made Cancelliere knock it on. The knock-on leads to a scrum penalty. So it's just more New Zealand pressure, eh? It's all the All Blacks. I mean, Bruni won a turnover on defence, so you're thinking, are they going to have a chance to counter it? But then Moroni just kicked it out on the full. So the commentators here in New Zealand mentioned it. The Pumas guys just looked rattled. They didn't look composed at all. The Argentinians, it gets worse because they get a yellow card warning. The All Blacks go for a 5-metre maul. Smith ends up sniping over when the maul gets stopped, but they had advantage anyway. And Bruni, who I think has probably been and probably is the most impressive, certainly loose forward from Argentina in the game, ends up copping 10 minutes with a yellow card. So 31-0 at half-time. It is a lopsided contest, to put it mildly. Possession, 67% All Blacks, 5 clean breaks to 1, 17 defenders beaten to 4. And the Pumas, despite only having 33% of the ball, have conceded more turnovers than the All Blacks, 8-7. Run meters is 322 to 128. Penalties conceded is 8-2. Some of those in the scrum, like 3 maybe. Yeah, it was nasty stuff for the Pumas in that first half. Second half, though, it certainly was a different game. Because, I don't know, the Pumas, whatever they said at halftime, at least seemed to settle them down. Or you could potentially take into account the All Blacks guys at 31-0. Are maybe not looking as ruthless as they were in the first half. I mean, the AB scrum is still strong. They attacked the Argentinian goal line really early, but get pinged for a neck roll. I think that one was Scotty Barrett. So, bit of a get out of jail. And then, two of my favourite players, I was talking about Bruni before, him and Gallo linked together from the Argentinian squad. Their best attack, I think, so far. They link up to get a good kind of thrust up the midfield from New Zealand. They end up going about 5 metres out. They go through some phases back for advantage, and then with the scrum not kind of working out and a bit of a central bit of field position, they go for the tap, and it's that man Gallo as well. He goes close, Alemanno goes close. I think Alemanno may have got it down, but anyway, Sordoni gets it down a phase or two later, so much needed points for the Pumas. They missed the conversion, but it's now 31-5, so at least they are not under the threat of getting nilled anymore. Sanchez comes on. His first kick's a bit of a stinker, puts his team under pressure. They are able to exit, but only just outside their own 22. And that leads to an All Blacks scrum a few minutes later, and it's another big old gap for that man D-Mac. He puts Geordie Barrett through, and misconversion is 36-5. So any momentum from that Pumas score kind of gets deflated there, and I think it does come back to the Sanchez kind of missed kick. Both sides ring a bunch of changes, so it does disrupt the play a little bit as both the sides try to kind of settle down a wee bit. Sam Cane's still making big tackles though. Heap of New Zealand phases does lead to the last try for the All Blacks, which is Narawa's one. D-Mac was doing really well to shift the ball wide, I thought, so 41 points to 5 at that point. But then at the death, the Pumas did get one through Agustin Creevy, who's come on for Montoya. I think he was the last substitute to come on. I'm not sure if that breaks the maul record. I would count it as a maul try, even though Creevy kind of peeled off at the end to finish it off. But yeah, it's been an area where since Jason Ryan's come in, people have told me the maul defence for the All Blacks has been virtually flawless. But that was a maul try for mine, so 41-10. Second half, man, like you can talk up the All Blacks, and I don't mean to be a pessimist when we scored 41 points to 12. But I feel like the Pumas surrendered a few easy ones. And let's go through the stats. Possessions 51-49 to the ABs. But remember, it was like 67-33 at halftime. So the Argentinians certainly had more ball in the second half. Run meters is 431 to 330 to the ABs, but second half is 202 to 109 to the Pumas. Defenders beaten is 25-23 to the Pumas, which means it was a big second half shift from them. Clean breaks though finishes 2-7, so the All Blacks dominate that one. But also the penalties. Remember, that was the killer in the first half for the Pumas. They conceded, what was it at halftime, like 9, 8? By the end of the game, they only had 12, so they only conceded 3 in the second half, whereas the ABs had only conceded 2, whereas they ended up conceding 9. So 7 in that second half. So the All Blacks lose the second half. I don't mean to be a pessimist again, like 12-10, 2 tries apiece in the second half. All Blacks were good. All Blacks got that early lead, maybe took their foot off the gas a wee bit, but the Pumas certainly were a bit not themselves in that first half, I reckon. So, yeah, not every team will come at you like that, like the Pumas did in the first half. But again, credit to the ABs. I don't mean to be raining on Fozzie's parade, man. They came out of the blocks. Apart from that early kind of scare with the charge down, firing, the All Blacks were pretty ruthless. They scored some pretty slick tries, man. D-Mac ends up with 3 try assists. He pulled the strings really well, even if the goal kicking wasn't quite there. Juan had 4 defenders beaten, a couple of clean breaks, got a try. Jordy Barrett made 14 from 16 tackles, so some good shifts. Gallo had 4 defenders beaten. Bruni, 59 metres, 3 defenders beaten, a clean break, and 14 from 15 tackles. Despite his yellow card, I thought he had a pretty good shift on the losing side. So, yeah, Sam came with the big hits. It was, it was a bit of a lopsided one in the end, but still, competitive second half. You guys let us know your thoughts on the game. If you're in the States and want to watch this, or the Box against Wallabies game, remember Flow Sports, Flow Rugby is the place where you can do that. So down in the description is a link if you want to check Flow Sports for you guys in America. But yeah, New Zealand travel home to play the Box at Mount Smart. And the Pumas are off to Australia. You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.